A while ago I decided to challenge myself with a limited palette project. So for this project I chose a Goblin Loon Boss from the Gloomspite Gits range, and I chose colors-wise Plum from Pro Acryl, Yellow Ochre from Pro Acryl, Coal Black from Pro Acryl, and Bold Titanium White from Pro Acryl. Now this project was partially for me to test out the paints because we had just gotten them in the shop, and I always like to try out different things before I try and sell them to people. I will tell you for sure I love these paints. The matte finish on them is 100% what I'm going for, and I really like the range. So anyway, aside from that, what the project really taught me was how to, or I guess reinforced for me, is how to push my values and how to mix colors a little bit more strategically to try and get a broader range of colors out of such a limited palette. I really enjoyed the process and I really enjoyed the end result. I think this guy is actually really cool. And what this has actually spiraled into is I really want to try and make an entire army out of a somewhat limited palette. I want to add a little bit of more color to this to make it a little bit more exciting and maybe not so challenging on myself. So today we're going to go ahead and try and start that process and do some testing on a squig. Help us get a visualization here of what I'm talking about with color scheme. I've taken the liberty of making up a quick color chart or color wheel. I find these types of color wheels extremely helpful when trying to map out the color scheme for an army or an army project. So as you can see here, our previous color scheme, we've got a complementary purple and yellow, or the plum and yellow ochre that we talked about earlier with our black and white. So I think in order to make this project a little bit more exciting, we're going to go ahead and expand and shift over our values slightly. So we're going to go ahead and shift into red-violet, keep our yellow or yellow ochre or yellow-orange, and then move into a blue-green. Now, I think the primary colors that we're going to use on the goblins are, red, violets, pinks, so on and so forth, and then yellows. But to help expand and make the army a little bit more exciting, we're going to go ahead and move into these blue-greens for most likely the squigs and the trogs, just to add a little bit of excitement. So I've gone ahead and laid in our extra colors here. So we've got our red-violet over our plum and added in yellow with our yellow ochre and then our blue-green color. Again, I think this will help establish a very strong background or backbone for our color scheme to go ahead and move forward with. Now, if you're doing a project similar to this or trying to follow this guideline for your own project, don't feel like you're trapped into these 6 colors or 3 colors, whichever way you want to look at it. Really, this again is just to establish like a good base. So we can then go ahead and say, for example, take something like red and add it to our eyes of our goblins to make things a little bit more exciting on the face. So don't feel trapped here. This is really just to help guide you. So we've found our unwilling test subject with a smile only a mother could love, of course. So to start this project, we are going to go ahead and do a base coat of dark Prussian blue from Vallejo. So now that we've gotten that nice coat of Prussian blue, we can go ahead and move on to our second skin color. And that is Jade. So with this, what we're trying to do, I coined this term in my head a long time ago. It's the 3/4 rule, basically. So what we're trying to preserve are the shadows that we've established with this dark Prussian blue. So we only really want to cover about 3/4 of the, form that we're trying to paint. Now, not model, form. So I try and break down each one of these into their own individual forms. So as you can see there, I'm trying to leave just a little bit of shadow area under each of those colors. This is essentially what is referred to as layer painting, a technique that's probably one of the better ones to learn, especially early on when you're in your painting journey. While we go ahead and let that jade color dry, we're going to go ahead and take the opportunity to use burgundy to fill in the inside of the mouth and cover up the teeth, the mushrooms, and the claws. Our next step here, while we're waiting for the burgundy to dry inside the mouth, is to go ahead and take the light jade, or bright jade, sorry, and do the third coat on the skin. So just like we talked about with the first coat of skin, we're trying to, again, use the principles of the 3/4 rule. So we've laid down our jade, or our darker jade, and now we want to take this and apply it as a 3/4 rule to that form that we've created with that darker jade. Something like that. We're leaving progressively, I guess, or laying down progressively smaller areas of color. So now that we've got that third layer of skin color established roughly on the model, we're going to go ahead and try and blend some of this together. So to do that, we're going to take our original jade color and then mix it about 50-50 with our bright jade color. And then I would only really apply this in the lower areas, like down here on the jaw, and this is just giving us a nice transition. So our next step is actually to knock all of this down slightly. So we're going to take an ancient bottle of wash, Colia Green Shade, and apply it to most of the skin on the model. So as any of you guys that have worked with any of the GW shades know, this stuff can take quite a while to dry. So when doing army projects like this, I find it extremely helpful to try and break everything down into a process. So for this squig, as this shade is drying, you know, because I don't really want to mess with that, I'm going to go ahead and take my yellow ochre and then re-establish my teeth and then my claws and then probably these little spikes on the back. You may ask yourself, well, if you were going to go back and paint them yellow, why did you cover them up with the red? I think really this red color, especially in the mouth, because it was going to be messy no matter what I did, is a good transition color between the gums and the teeth. It'll just help kind of keep all of that looking good. Now that our shade is starting to dry and our teeth and spines and claws are starting to dry as well, we're going to go ahead and take an opportunity to use some Agrax Earthshade to shade in those teeth. Our next step here, while we let that wash dry, is actually to go back in and start touching up these mushrooms. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of my Bold Titanium White and mix it into my previous burgundy color, just to give us a nice pinkish color. Our next step here on the mushrooms is actually to wash them down with a Carroburg Crimson. I often call this Caribou Crimson, so if you ever catch me doing that on video, it's just the way I've called it for a million years, so sorry about that. You'll find that sometimes the mistakes that you had made previously will get covered up by this step, which is really nice. Makes your job a little bit easier, especially when, you know, you got to keep in mind that I'm going to probably end up painting like 40 of these guys, so I've got to keep my process pretty lean and mean. Now that that is drying, we're going to go ahead and take our bright jade and then reapply it back to the skin. Now this time we're really trying to go over as a pass of like, this is not our final highlight, but pretty close to our final highlight, so just really reestablish a lot of those forms. You'll see me kind of do more of a modeled approach when I'm at this step, just to give, you know, I guess more exciting finish. So you see how I'm almost doing like a cross-hatching with my painting right there. I find that this just adds a lot of texture to the model, which I really enjoy. I know not everybody is, you know, too keen on that. And you can really do this and start establishing this at any step. I actually find the more layers of this type of painting you do, the better end result you actually have. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and reapproach those teeth. So we've got our yellow ochre, and we're going to mix a little bit of that titanium white in there, not a whole lot, just to get a slightly brighter value. So same thing with the skin, we're really just trying to apply this, you know, as a highlight. So our last step here on getting this squig table ready is actually to do the eyes. So we've been layering up some yellows and some reds with our Carroburg, whatever it's called, wash on our yellow ochre. So we're going to go ahead and retouch that up with some yellow ochre. really the important one is the big one there. I think we just got rid of a lot of our shading. Whoops. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and mix that with a little bit of white. Now we're going to do this on the model since that color is still wet. Boop, boop, boop. Unfortunately, with Colorado's dry climate, I have to work extremely fast with this type of stuff. So now that we've got those eyes nice and bright, kind of hard to see with my light setting right now, we're going to go ahead and add some fluorescent orange over those eyeballs. So in order to work with the stuff, you've got to kind of realize that it's not just like a regular layer of paint. You can't just apply it by itself, otherwise you're not going to get any type of effect. So you really have to apply it over progressively lighter shades, you know, type stuff like that. So like what we've done here with the yellow ochre and the white. So I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of this orange. Sometimes you got to play with it a little bit to get the right consistency. We're just going to apply it all over the eyeball there. Go back in and correct some stuff over here, but that's okay. So my reasoning for choosing orange as my fluorescent color over my eyeballs here is red and teal have a tendency to go really well together. Like we talked about earlier when we were staring at the color wheel, we have a base color scheme that we're trying to shoot for, which was the the red violet, the blue green, and the yellow. So in order to, you know, kind of jump away from that, we've established it all over the model, and now we can actually go in and take I guess our pop color, which is our orange, and then just apply it in a small area, and then it doesn't feel like it's overwhelming the color scheme at all, and it's it works with the scheme that we've established. So, as I said a little bit earlier, I believe this guy is tabletop ready, aside from the basing, of course. So we're going to go ahead and move on and end this video here in a second, but just to show you a, I guess, preview of the next video, or maybe part of the next video, we've already taken this color scheme and applied it to a goblin. So I think really in the next squig video we're going to try and focus more on the goblin instead of the squig, and then see where we end up with that. Thanks as always for watching. I hope that this has been informational for you, and we'll see you in the next video.